Let's go.
Hi everyone, and welcome to today's AMA session. I'm Shubhangi and I'll be your host for this exciting event. We're thrilled to have Vishesh Jhol, Head of Startups at PayU. Vishesh works closely with startups to drive growth through payments, lending solutions, and early stage investments. He has also led PayU's Bharat Bill Payment System business to surpass $1 billion in transaction volume. Thank you for being here, Vishesh. How are you?
Thank you so much, Shubhangi, and thanks for this opportunity. I'm good. I actually have had quite a Saturday morning, did my workout, so now excited to do this.
Wonderful. Let's get started. To kick things off, I have few questions prepared and then we'll open the floor to the audience. Audience, I request you to write your questions in Q&A section available on your screens. And we are thrilled to have a massive audience joining us and we are excited to announce that we are going live on YouTube as well. So don't miss that out. Uh, so great. Vishesh, my first question to you is, UPI has totally changed the game for businesses in India. What do you think why do you think it has been such a big deal for startups?
I think there are three things to understand when we look at UPI and the three waves, right? I was looking at some data. In fact, I posted about this yesterday on the kind of growth that's happening. I think the first wave was really the fintechs like PhonePe, Google Pay,
Right.
that took off and enabled an ease of use and payments for everyone. For they just enabled it en masse. Then came maybe the long tail, very focused fintechs like Navi and Cred, and now they are at a certain scale. But I think the most exciting part, or probably the third wave of UPI now, is really on the credit side, where a lot is happening on credit, and probably that's not just going to increase the offtake of UPI, but also the offtake of credit in India because retail credit is anyway growing. There's a very low penetration of credit cards in India. I think UPI on credit could be a game changer, and that's what um, um, the big deal right now for startups is, or should be, maybe in that direction. But in general, I think these three waves that I talked about made decacons, right? Phone pays today over
Right.
$1 billion, and then there are multiple unicorns like Cred, and now probably the third wave with the Flipkart launching their own solution, Super Money, then Navi launching the credit on UPI, Kiwi, one of our own, launching that. So I think the third wave and something to be really, really excited about is credit on UPI now.
Yeah, lockdown has totally changed the game for UPI transactions and UPI platforms, and they have empowered startups and seamless transactions. Thank you for your point of view. And my next question to you is, when you are working with startups, what's the biggest myth or misconception you hear about using UPI?
I think there are two, three things to think about here. One is really on the side of, say, UPI is meant for very small transactions and it's not meant for very large size transactions. I was looking at some data again. In fact, I'll give you an example. I just recently did some work for some land piece that we have in Himachal. Wanted to establish domicile. I mostly ended up paying the registration fee, all the stamp paper duties, everything through Google Pay. Just being able to do these large transactions on UPI are a norm and should be done. Now most of your investments that are linked for IPO, for your SIPs, are also or can be done through UPI. RBI has also come up with debt instruments that you can invest through UPI. So I think one thing that people should, or the myth that UPI is only meant for very small transactions, is really a myth. And the more use cases that get added to UPI, the more the ticket size will increase with credit, with investments, with so on. Um, the second thing is, I think a lot of people fear digital payments for the same reason, and they fear UPI for the same reason. of it being prone to fraud or misused.
Yeah.
I think one thing that everyone needs to understand, like in India, unlike most other Western countries, we have a two-factor authentication. So unless you have gone ahead and selected a payment and entered your PIN, I don't
Very
think you
true.
pull that money out. And yeah, I think these are two things that one could or hopefully should get over while thinking of what to build around UPI or while thinking about UPI in general.
Great point, Vishesh. It's eye-opening to hear how myths like UPI being complex still exist, especially when it's designed to simplify and boost efficiency for businesses of all sizes. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, and multiple use cases getting added, right? I think especially investments will be a big use case, credit will be a big use case, and UPI can really democratize that part.
right, right. So we'll now open the floor to the audience. We have our first question from our audience. How can candidates balance the inherent risk of working in startups with long-term career stability?
No, fantastic question. In fact, something I can probably speak a lot about. Here is my take on it, or here is my journey on it, and everyone's journey is different. So please take it with a pinch of salt and take it in your context.
Sure, sure.
I was at Airtel about 6.5 years ago when I got this opportunity. My former boss from Snapdeal had called and said that we're starting this new division. Would you want to work on this? And PayU today is a fairly large company. It was back then also, but it was a startup, a more founder-led company in the traditional, in the true sense. Um, and I took that risk, or let's say I took that opportunity, got this opportunity to build something, and over a period of time, uh, was given an ecosystem that supported me to build this. Now, I think when people think of startups, because you hear all of these stories of overnight successes, I know some of the people in the founding team at Swiggy. I know so many people, so many of my friends at Zomato, or any company that has gone public or has done the journey. And so have I here. I mean, we have not gone public yet, but that we're on that journey. I think any of it, any of what you do on a daily basis is hard, but I'm a big fan of the power law. If anyone's read or whoever's asked this question, please read about the power law. It's 0 to 1. I definitely recommend by Peter Thiel. Great book. But it says that you want to, you as an individual cannot diversify your life. Like you can only spend that limited amount of the same time that we have on a particular thing. Unlike your investments in mutual funds, you can't diversify your life, your time so much, right? So you're spending your time building something over a period of time. If you feel that today working at a large firm, you're doing something really worth its while and are part of a bigger journey, please keep doing that. I think that versus working at a startup um, could sound very exciting, but risk adjusted reward, if you see, owning a very small percentage of Google 10 years ago
Hmm.
to owning a very large part of many unicorns that have shut down, uh, the smarter choice would be that. But that's a call that one takes. But yeah, over a long period of time, that's how investments are justified. Your every asset has to justify a risk reward ratio, right? So think about where your talent is best utilized, where you think you're part of a bigger journey, and most importantly, do you think the time that you're spending today is aligned to getting you the best outcome in the future? None of it, neither a startup nor a large company, will make you money in the traditional sense or will make you successful unless you see a journey of building something over a long period of time and unless you see it to the finish line and maybe even beyond for that matter in terms of scale and so on. So it really depends on what's your risk taking appetite and what your skill set is and where it's you getting utilized the best. For me, it was here. I've been here over 6 years now. This is where I've learned payments. This is where I've learned entrepreneurship. This is where I learned how to build teams, how to scale businesses, how to work with regulators, how to be careful about risk and processes. So it's been very rewarding for me, and hopefully the IPO will be further rewarding. But that's a byproduct of what your journey is or has been.
Well said, Vishesh. Moving on, we have next question from Venkata Kalyana. He's asking, with the government contemplating on introducing fees for UPI payments, will UPI continue to retain its edge?
Um, sure. I think UPI in terms of what this is, and so everyone should just realize we always had UPI because UPI is built on IMPS rails. It just for you now the penetration of UPI and the usage of it across various consumer payment apps is just so ubiquitous that I don't think its edge is going to get lost. Payments in general, P2P or P2M, are happening a lot now. I think we crossed about 15 billion transactions last month.
Oh.
That's staggering. I mean, think about the kind of money we are moving through UPI. So I don't think its edge is going to go away. In fact, I think credit on UPI, UPI getting linked for investments, UPI for you doing multiple other things that you do today through other means like net banking or other instruments is only going to increase. So its edge is going to increase. Whether charging on it will have a challenge, I don't. As someone who has these conversations pretty much on a daily basis, I don't think the charge on it will really be on the P2M side, or even in a lot of use cases which are on the P2P side, or even a large number of use cases on the P2M side. Mostly the charge or where it starts getting monetized is credit on UPI, where it starts generating some income. And of course, if you're taking credit, the issuer is taking the risk on you. The issuer is giving you credit for a while. So yes, that definitely will get monetized.
So I
But
guess, yeah, sorry.
yeah, but if you ask me my view on this, I think um, uh, charging of it will not take the edge away, and charging on it will only happen for specific segments.
Yeah, interesting perspective. I guess fees might pose a few challenges, but convenience and innovation will likely to keep its strong contender in the payments landscape.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we have another question from our audience. How can one adapt their skills to meet the paced demands of startups environment?
Sure. Let me talk about again here. I think startups want you to do multiple things at the same time. Your, say, compare it to Google or an Airtel that we spoke of. It's usually fairly structured. Processes are evolved. Someone's been doing this for years on end. So you know exactly what you have to do. It's fairly defined for you. And morning to evening, you end up doing the same thing, probably for a few years you do the same thing, and then you get to a different role, and then you do the same thing for a few years. It's fairly defined, fairly structured. That's for a large traditional company. In a startup, you have to actually start thinking like an entrepreneur. Start thinking like you're running this part of the business, so you need to solve for everything that comes your way. That's what I had to do when I started here. You had to learn a little bit of engineering, or at least how engineers work. You had to learn, I mean, some training on product definitely helped, some work around that. You had to do sales yourself. You had to hire a team. You had to work on operations, send reports, understand risk, work with regulators. So I think a startup allows you and wants you rather to do multiple things at the same time. And that's what you should be ready for. Your skill set is mostly your ability to learn and how fast can you adapt to change, and just your willingness to go and solve things. That's broadly what a startup is looking for, because if you're willing to learn, you are able to change fast, and you're able to go and solve things, you should be good in any environment, and mostly a startup for sure.
Such a practical advice, Vishesh. Willingness to learn and being flexible and proactive is really important for being a part of startup. So great. Moving on, we have a question from another of our audience. How do you handle setbacks in high pressure environment like startup, and what mindset helps in bouncing back stronger?
uh, okay, I can share a few anecdotes maybe, but let me answer the question broadly first. I think setbacks in general become very real because in startups, you're usually working with a certain set of constraints. You are responsible for a certain outcome, usually, and it gets reflected in the numbers very, very soon. So it's not that, unlike in a structured firm, which is a large structured firm, you're moving part of the wheel or part of the whole machine. You're doing that part, and its impact on the overall P&L or on the number for that month may not be visible to you, or if it is, maybe visible to you once in a year or during your reviews and so on. But here, you are pretty much on a daily basis looking at what is it that you're doing and what is the company getting out of it, or what is it that you're contributing to. So I think setbacks are a daily thing in startups. You just have to know that it's pretty much going to be a fight every day. So if you have a great day, if you have a great week, if you have a great month, just know that just by law of averages, something bad is going to happen. It's just the norm, right? That's how the world works. That's how I've over so many years that I've worked. I think life is not linear. We usually see it from a distance when we work in a large setup and do that specific thing. So it seems linear, but in a startup, it's very everyday. So if you have a great day, don't pat yourself too much. If you have a terrible day, don't hold yourself down too much. Every day is going to be something new. I do this thing, which I can probably recommend. I write a lot. My action points for every week at least are very clear to me. So on Saturday and Sunday, I will chalk out certain amount of time to say that these are the things that I need to solve for next week. I will take them as action points. I still write on a notebook. So I think I'm fairly old for maybe most of the attendees here, but I do that and then check it off by the end of the week. Have I done these things?
Hmm.
Uh, if I have, I'm good. If I haven't, I just try and do more. But yeah, that's broadly what you can do. You can't really control most of the outcomes, but you can pretty much control what inputs you put in. So again, don't hold yourself down if something bad happens. Just figure out better ways to do it. Ask for help. I have done that. Multiple things have happened here. I can go into anecdotes, but maybe later, or can do that one on one if you want to reach out. But also don't pat yourself too much if you have a great day, because something um, may be around the corner that you need to be watchful for.
Great, inspiring thoughts, Vishesh. I think we should treat setbacks as learning opportunities every time we have a setback. Yeah. So, moving on, we have a question from Ankit Kumar. He's asking, according to you, sir, what is the biggest advantage of UPI and cons of UPI and why?
Okay, this could take a while. I think the biggest advantage of UPI is just the ease of access and how ubiquitous it is right now. It's just go back maybe 5 6 years, and if there is audience that can go back 5 6 years and think about how the world was, if I had to send payments to my friends after a trip, I had to take in either their bank account details. I mean, this is not too far back. I think when we were in business school, we would use Splitwise, uh, have after every trip, see what.
Yeah, I also used to use that.
Yeah, so we would say this is for your account, this is for my account. Sending money P2P has just become as easy as sending a message, right? As communicating. That's what you did. So instead of taking bank account, IFSC, registering the beneficiary, sending the money, doing all of that, you can now just message on that number at the rate UPI or at the rate YBL or at the rate whichever bank that they are using, right? Or mostly do it on the app. You don't even have to remember their number or their UPI handle. Um, so I think that one should see as a huge boon for what or how things have changed over a period of time and dramatically so. Um, Multiple other benefits. Merchants today, if you think about COVID, I've seen two waves of digitization. I was in a digital wallet company when demonetization happened, and
Hmm.
around digitizing payment acceptance at 23,000 petrol stations across the country. There are about 50,000 petrol stations. We went around 23,000 petrol stations to digitize payment acceptance there. It was massive. What happened around that time, what we were able to do, not so much from UPI around that time because it was still the wallet era, but all of those apps that were wallet based at that point in time have then switched to UPI. So it's just become a form factor, right? But
Right.
their presence was there. So ubiquity, how large that wave was, UPI also benefited from that because the user base had already been created through these apps. Um, the other bit is think about what it can do for credit, what it can do for investments, what it can do for your subscriptions of bills and OTTs and so on. It could just make life so much simpler rather than going every day and looking at bills and so on, filing those bills, all of that. So mandates will make life very very easy. So there are a lot of pros. The cons of UPI, that might be hard for me to say, and at the cost of sounding controversial, it's probably taken a lot of load on the bank's infrastructure. It's taken a lot of load off on the PNL of most payment providers. If you see the Bajaj Housing Finance IPO, 16% of the mandates didn't go through. People could not get the IPO allocation. There could be also instances where a lot of UPI on credit, the first wave did not go through because there was discoverability issues
Hmm.
when link their bank overdraft to get credit line on UPI. Still, the 10,000 crore that is being processed approximately on credit line on UPI is mostly with RuPay credit cards and not so much with the bank overdraft facility. So discoverability, some of it is a challenge in some of these protocols. Um, I think there are a few things that still need to be fixed on that front. But yeah, that's just the wave of technology, right? It keeps getting better and better over a period of time and keeps getting fixed. So yeah, the next wave of it hopefully fixes all of that, and the cons will become maybe different cons. Not so much of a con, I would say constraints. There are a lot of pros, and right now there are some constraints that one is trying to work through, but I only see positives from it.
I think security concerns are also there in the back of mind of people. But I think if we educate them regarding the UPI system, uh, it can be converted into a pro rather than a con. What do you
Sure. I think with security systems, something that one should know, one should realize, and this has happened to probably all of us. Um, I think everyone gets a call these days that your parcel is stuck in customs, and
Yes,
uh,
that's common.
credit cards and drugs are going in that parcel, or you've been house arrested and now you can't go anywhere. I think some of these is really the extent of the con that is happening. And now we're talking about the con, really, not the cons of pros and cons. There are multiple frauds that can happen. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is of a particular instrument, of a particular payment mode. Now, if there's a guy who's calling you and telling you that there are drugs going in your parcel, you would make the transfer whichever instrument that you can use if you get conned by that con, right? It wouldn't matter if it's UPI or a credit payment or so
Right,
on.
right.
And this has been happening forever. I mean, we used to get, you will get a job, you park 5,000 rupees here, or you won a lottery of some billion, million dollars in our emails. This has been happening forever. It's just that the cons, so to speak, the fraud cons in that context have become a lot more sophisticated, have
Hmm.
become a lot more pervasive. A lot more people are on these apps today, are a lot more people are using smartphones. So probably the incidence of this is increasing. But I think there's a lot of work that's happening with the FIU unit on mule accounts, on these kind of frauds, education that the government is doing through various means, right? So I
Right.
think not really a problem of the instrument as such, but the problem of the fraud industry, if I were to
Hmm.
say. Over.
Yeah, good points, Vishesh. Moving on, we have another question from Venkat. He's asking, you talked about using UPI for purchasing a property in HP. How much cashback was awarded? For the recent Diwali sale with purchases upwards of rupees 5 lakh, I've received cash back of more than 50K on credit card, and this is being supported by Reliance Digital, Chroma, and pretty much everyone else. Can UPI match or surpass this advantage? Also, the elite membership rewards the credit cards offer with the loyalty programs may not permit the UPI arena, right?
Okay, perfect. Love this question, Venkat. And let's have a chat about this, maybe even after this. Two, three things that one needs to understand about UPI versus credit cards. When you use a credit card to make a transaction, the merchant is paying something called a MDR, merchant discount rate. Say you go and purchase goods worth, you said 5 lakh rupees.
Hmm.
Say on any Amazon, you on Diwali, you wanted to renovate or just get all new electronics for your house, and you went on Amazon and you shopped for 5 lakh rupees. Now, what you've done is Amazon, you've shopped on Amazon for 5 lakh rupees. You've made a payment of 5 lakh rupees, but Amazon will receive, say, they have an MDR of 2% on this. Amazon will receive 5 lakh minus the 2%. So, the 10,000 rupees that you've paid is what Amazon, or rather, Amazon has to pay to someone like us, thankfully, is where the money is being made in this, right? So that's the difference. Whereas if you made the payment through UPI, 5 lakh rupees paid by you will go as 5 lakh rupees to Amazon broadly. So here, when a credit card transaction happens, there is a 10,000 rupee pool that we have created in this 5 lakh rupee transaction. And out of that 10,000 rupee pool, which is the income for the issuer, say you had an Access credit or an Amazon ICICI credit card. Now, with an Amazon ICICI credit card, they're earning something while you're making the payment on a particular online or a offline platform.
Transaction, yeah.
With that money that they've made on this, they will be able to give you multiple cashbacks and offers and promote that you spend more and more on this, so that they can, you have a better credit file with them, you transact more with them, use more of their services, and they can make money off it. That's how issuers of credit cards make money. So once I'm making 10,000 rupees, I'm able to give you some back. I'm
Hmm.
able to say that, hey, here is a Vistara Lounge access.
Hmm.
Here is a Chroma voucher for your next purchase, or here is a Lux Salon discount for something, right? Because I have that pool of revenue to work with. On the other hand, on UPI, it's a debit instrument, right? So a debit instrument is essentially taking money from your bank account and sending it to someone. That merchant is not paying really anything on UPI. So this person who's taking money from your bank account and giving it to the merchant is not making anything on it. So essentially, there's a lesser pool to work with. Having said that, credit on UPI, especially with if you look at Super Money by Flipkart, they are giving a 5% cashback, or at least were at the initial stages to drive adoption. But again, that's credit on UPI because they could be making some money there on the transaction value. Will UPI uh, be able to match these loyalty programs and cashback schemes?
Hmm.
Hard for me to say. Logic is that they don't have a revenue pool to work with.
Hmm.
Secondly, draw this as a parallel to any other debit instrument. Have you been getting paid cashbacks on net banking or debit cards or any of these instruments, right? Where there is very limited pool. In fact, even debit cards used to or still do have a certain fee while you make the payment through a debit card. But you don't get mostly the cashbacks because there's a lesser revenue pool on a debit instrument. But
So
yeah, fantastic thought. I mean, something to think about for sure.
So I guess because the credit card companies are earning back because of every transaction, that's how they pay you cashbacks and all, because they are already earning from that transaction.
Yeah.
And UPI doesn't have that model, uh, so
Yeah.
that we can give cashbacks.
For the of a credit card, there's a revenue pool to work with, so they can pass some of that back to you.
Great, great. We have another question from our audience. How does UPI low cost transaction structure benefit startups in terms of profitability and scalability?
Got it. Okay. Sorry, could you repeat that once?
How does UPI low cost transaction structure benefit startups in terms of profitability and scalability?
Okay, got it, got it. Okay, fair enough. So how does the low cost structure of UPI benefit startups? Okay.
Yeah.
I think in multiple ways, right? Again, just to give you context, PhonePay is the largest UPI or process. I mean, the platform that processes the maximum amount of transactions on UPI. More than 90% of their transactions, from what I last know, go through UPI. So every time you make a bill payment or you make a use any of their services on the app, or you make a P2P payment, uh, it's mostly going free for them because at the checkout they promote, or most of their transactions are going through UPI. So for an app to scale, say you're making a bill payment on PhonePay. Earlier, for most of the apps before UPI, you would either pay it through your bank ideally or load
Hmm.
a card and so on. If you remember the early days of Paytm, you would mostly be paying it through a card, and then everyone introduced fees to pay through a card,
Hmm.
and eventually, that had to be curtailed. So I think UPI provides massive scale for any consumer application that is trying to attract more and more consumers by making them by making them transact more there, by reducing the payments, the cost of payments for them, and by reducing the cost of scale. So I think the low cost structure of UPI really helps most of the startups reduce their cost of payments. That's the biggest. The second bit is the mandates that you get to create also reduce the churn for these startups, for these consumer applications. Credit line on UPI is a big way for them to interact and now start, the third wave, like I said, of UPI to start doing credit. That's another arena that has opened up for startups. So multiple different things, but the low cost structure, I think, reduces the cost of a startup of its own payments that are happening on the platform, and that really helps them scale much faster and creates a healthier P&L for them.
Great point, Vishesh. Another question from the audience. How can startups address security concerns and build trust among customer using UPI? I mean, there are many Instagram profiles that offer enticing products, and I, as a customer, I'm afraid if I make UPI payment through their payment portal, uh, will my money will be lost?
Um, okay. This is very important for everyone to understand. I think, in general, just as consumers, whenever you make a payment, please know that most businesses will not ask you unless you know someone and they're in your colony and delivering something to you for a P2P payment,
Okay.
which means that I will not, as a merchant, give you my UPI ID to make a,
Hmm.
and you shouldn't also to a large extent. When you're making payment on a particular website, first of all, you want to check a few things. Is it a secure website? Do they have a payment aggregator that is a reliable payment aggregator? Would you, I mean, there are only a few now in this country, right? They're fairly established players. You would mostly get to notice that if there is a payment checkout, you will have multiple options. Let's say you have only UPI as an option because that's the focus area of this conversation. Say you go to this Instagram, that this website that you figured out on Instagram, you like this product, and you get redirected to their website. Please check if it's a secure website. You mostly get that with HTTPS. While you're making the payment, you don't have to worry if your payment is, say, you make the payment and your product doesn't get delivered.
Hmm.
That is something where you can raise a first a refund request with your merchant. You can go to their website, raise a refund request. If it doesn't go through, you can raise a chargeback request. What a refund is, say for example, you uh, bought something on Mintra,
Hmm.
you don't like the product, or the product doesn't get delivered to you, or the payment doesn't go through, or any of these scenarios, multiple scenarios, you can request for a refund, and Mintra mostly gives you a refund instantly, right? That's a refund. But say if the product didn't get delivered and Mintra is saying that the product did get delivered, then there is something called a chargeback that you raise, that hey, I made the payment, but the product or the service that I paid for did not get delivered. You can raise that chargeback request with your bank. Bank will work with the schemes and the merchant and get you your money back. So you don't have to worry if you've gone through a payment aggregator while you're making the payment, that will you get your money back or not? Will you be defrauded? But yes, be very, very careful. And I would say, by as a rule, don't transfer money to an ID, because there's no way for you to there's usually no merchant will do that unless they're a kirana store owner
Hmm.
and delivering something to you and sending someone to just receive the money like that. Don't do that. But if you do get defrauded in some sense, that you did not get a product or service that you paid for delivered to you, you can raise a refund request and eventually a chargeback request, and you should be able to get your money back through the legitimate process.
Great. So moving on, we have a question from Sachindra. He's asking, going forward with UPI as DPI or DPG, what could be the possible innovations in fintech could be anticipated, or any example or use case from your work at PayU?
Okay. I think this is something that I talked about, and something that I will also repeat at the cost of repeating myself. Let me say that credit on UPI is a very large opportunity, something that everyone should look at. Um, Mandates how retail penetration and retail participation is increasing in investments is a big opportunity, and there's a massive gap to fill in terms of experience there. Just look at the Bajaj Finance IPO, or what happened during the election results, where either it's a platform that's crashing, or a UPI app, or a supporting bank infrastructure. There's a lot to be fixed here. So I think these two opportunities, but if you were to say there is one thing that you want to look forward to and right now ride the wave on, is figure out as much as you can do on credit on UPI. And think about it. You're standing at a store today, at Chroma. You mostly will get, as soon as you want to purchase something, you will get a Bajaj Finance executive or some executive telling you that this is the financing scheme. Imagine you could just do that on your phone and you would get, according to your spend and according to your credit history and so on, you would get that offer right here, or of a no cost EMI or a low cost EMI option paid over a period of time, specifically designed for you, not a standard home loan rate and not a standard. Because if you're a great credit worthy customer, you should get credit at a lower rate. You should get credit at partner merchants at a lower rate with better schemes. You should get sachet sized credit. You've just taken a trip abroad and your salary for this month hasn't come in, but your credit card bill is due, or something or the other, right? There could be multiple ways. Today, you would go and cash in maybe your mutual fund or something, sell something to get that money back or borrow money from here and there. If you could start getting credit so easily as you make UPI payments today, credit for us is a very long term exercise today, where you go to a bank when you really need a home loan or a car loan or a education loan. These are the only conversations we have with the bank when we talk about credit. But imagine if you start having that conversation digitally on a daily basis every time you make a payment. I think that will really change the game, and that's something for everyone to look forward to.
Great point, Vishesh. We have a question from Virendra. He's asking, what do you think of UPI for cross-border payments?
It was, again, fantastic question. Good space to look at. Um, I think, first of all, just to set context for everyone, um, India is the highest inward remittance market in the world. We received $125 billion last year, and that came at about 6% cost. Let me go further and set context. $125 billion at 6% cost is $7.5 billion. That's $7.5 billion as a revenue opportunity for inward remittances in India. Now, could we ease that through UPI? Most of this inward remittance is coming from, say, Middle East, or as we call it, West Asia, or US, and wherever Indians are and sending money back home. Now, there are multiple ways for you to, sitting in the US or sitting wherever, make payments for bills for family that is here,
Hmm.
or multiple other ways. But can you ease remittance through UPI? The answer is yes. Has it started today? No. But something that we can really, really, like, imagine if I can reduce this cost to any extent. Today, if I'm paying 6%, so this means that every time in the country, if I want to make you payments, if I want to send money to Shubhangi, 100 rupees, and only 94 reaches her, she'll be fairly mad at me, right? Because that's not something that we can today understand.
Yeah.
But Shubhangi's cousin sitting in the US sends her money, $100, and only 94 reaches her. She's right now accepting that scenario because that's
True.
essentially what's happening. So huge scope to solve for that. Um, and I think it can have a massive impact in that space.
True.
The second is outward, which is harder. Today, most of the travel that we do, most of the education that we go out for, these are the two, three large areas where Indians spend or send money abroad. Um, this today is harder because there is an LRS limit, although UPI will be far under that LRS limit. But let's say there is an LRS check that you need to do, which is liberalized remittance services, that you get $2.5 lakh every year that you can send, but the check needs to be made. Then there is a TCS that over 7 lakh rupees, there will be a TCS depending on the purpose you're sending the money for. Then there are always these KYC constraints where who's sending the money, who are you sending money to, what it is for. According to the use case, there'll be tax implications, there'll be rates, and so on. So I think those things considered, outward may be a harder problem to solve. and
Hmm.
that's that one should look at if you're looking at it. But from an inward point of view, could UPI make a massive impact? Absolutely, because um, today, even if when you're receiving money abroad, not only is it costly, again, it's like credit. You go to a bank once a month,
Hmm.
you make that payment. Or today, Wise or other platforms have enabled it more easily. But it's still a transaction that requires, I mean, takes a lot of friction. Can you again do that like sending a message or an email as is just an interaction across countries? Yeah, could hold massive impact.
Exciting thoughts, Vishesh. I think if that happens, it would solve many problems for international transactions. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, we have next question from Ankit Kumar. He's asking, according to you, sir, which one is more safe to make a transaction, a UPI transfer or a bank account transfer?
Okay. First of all, a UPI transfer is a bank account transfer.
Yeah.
It's essentially UPI ID is pretty much, let's say your email ID is where you get emails in your inbox. Your UPI ID is just a representation of your bank account. It's pulling in money from your, if it's pulling money from your bank account and sending it to someone, or it's receiving money into your bank account, is just another name for your bank account, an easier name for people to remember, or an easier name for consumer apps to tag you as and just keep receiving and sending money. So it's the same thing. I would, venture and say UPI is far safer than, I understand when you say bank transfer, you probably meant net banking, or you probably meant
Yes.
IMPS or other modes of transfer. Um, here is an anecdote. I was making a payment to someone for some purchase of private shares, and I ended up paying 25,000 rupees, which is your first transfer that you can make after you register a beneficiary, right? In that day, I ended up making that beneficiary transfer. I got one number in the bank account detail wrong. Uh,
Okay.
Usually a bank transfer, you will get a bank number, you'll get an IFSC, you'll register that, and you'll make the first payment, right? Um, First of all, when you make that payment, there is right now no check. Is it the right account? In
Okay.
today, if you start adding, even if you now pay, and the parking guy tells you, here is my number, pay me on UPI. You
Hmm.
add there is number, you can see that this is Arjun Malik
Hmm.
as intendant, and this is who the money is going to, even if you're sending 20 rupees.
But in bank accounts, we can't see whom we are sending the money.
You're essentially getting that information, feeding it yourself.
Hmm.
You're responsible to ensure that that is correct. You don't get that. You can, there are multiple ways of penny drop and so on, but that's separate. I mean, I'm just trying to sort of define or answer the question specifically. So the onus of getting the information correct is on you, versus in UPI, where you can add the information and see who is it going to even before making the transfer. Secondly, um, you don't have to get any of that correct. Even if you have that person in your contact list,
Hmm.
you can just essentially tap on that number, don't remember anything, don't have to register a beneficiary, don't have to go through various other measures of checks and balances at your own end. You just make the payment. That verification is already happening. Lastly, and probably one of the most important things for people to remember on UPI versus IMPS versus net banking, most people don't realize, but bank accounts that have smaller balances get charged for a IMPS or a net banking transaction in some banks. I mean, I was charged uh, some small amounts only, but fairly annoying amounts by a large bank, probably the largest, one of the largest banks. Let me not say the largest, will probably identify, but the largest banks in the country was charged for an IMPS transaction. I shut that account. It's just annoying, right? Like when you're making a UPI transfer, which is free, why will I want to pay for any IMPS or
Of course.
IMPS or NEFT transaction. So those are things that you should look at, but far, far easier and safer to make a UPI transfer versus an IMPS, RTGS, NEFT.
So UPI is much more safer than the bank account, uh, IMPS or that transfer. Yeah. So moving on, we will be taking our last question from the audience. Venkat has asked, considering that GPay and Amazon Pay run the payment gateways on their vast and extensive infra, is it fair to say they would continue to lead the volumes in this space? I mean, monopoly.
Um, okay, Venkat, I think you meant their consumer apps, not the UPI apps and not the payment gateways. These two apps that you named, GPay and Amazon Pay, have UPI apps. I'm hoping that that's what you're talking about. So let me answer it accordingly. Um, on the on GPay and Amazon Pay, just look at the top apps on UPI. GPay was far ahead, um, or was really the first mover in a lot of ways. PhonePe came and completely took over, far, far ahead of GPay today. Um, then came in, Amazon Pay did a lot to make some inroads in the space. Then came in Cred. Cred became a big player in the UPI space. Today, one of the largest. Then came Navi after them, and Navi today has overtaken Cred. So there is, I think, a lot of scope if you're giving a differentiated or a better experience in in your app or to consumers in some ways, and you're creating that differentiated value or creating a better scan and pay experience or creating a better P2P experience or creating a better experience in terms of paying on the categories of services or products available on your app. I think there's a huge scope for you to be able to overtake the incumbents. So I don't think there is uh, a monopoly yet in this space. Yes, the top three, four apps do enjoy a very, very significant share. In fact, UPI volumes were supposed to be curtailed for one particular player to a certain level, but they have never been in. I think that's just the innovation that and of capitalism that you have to incentivize, right? You can give people more incentives, not less, for innovating and delivering a better experience.
Great. This has been a great discussion, Vishesh. Before we wrap up, if you could give one piece of advice to startups looking to scale with UPI, what would it be? And one last question: any recommendations or reading recommendations do you have for our audience?
Sure. Um, Reading recommendations I'll definitely put out at the last, but if you were to scale with UPI, or if I understand this question correctly, what's the space that you should look at right now? I think credit line on UPI, massive space. There are two, three things that you should think about. There's very low credit card penetration in this country. People on this call, or people like you and I, only have credit cards with formal income that comes in every month, that a bank is happy to underwrite and give you a credit card. Very, very few people in this country, less than 3-4% of this country has a credit card. Huge scope to disrupt that space. Retail credit is increasing at more than 16% CAGR for the last so many years. Something for you to look at. Systems are getting ready. There are enough loan management systems that can give you credit on the go, that can manage mandates, that can manage daily credits, that can manage weekly credits, repayment schedules, multiple other such opportunities that can give you credit specifically for that merchant, a specific offer based on your credit history instead of a standard loan percentage that a bank gives you. So many other innovations to be done in credit line on UPI. There is still a discoverability problem to be solved for, that you can't today link your overdraft facility. You can actually link, but the discoverability of that through UPI is difficult. RuPay credit cards are the only way right now which are pushing volume. So maybe tomorrow, multiple other instruments can also push volumes there. Um, you start getting credit line from banks today. Um, uh, for other use cases, like you're building your home, for example, and you've taken a home loan, but now you need a top up for putting in fancy furniture, or
Hmm.
like in maybe a fixture in the washroom, which was more expensive than you had anticipated. You
Hmm.
could get that on the go. That kind of ease, that kind of interaction with the banking infra can happen through UPI on credit. And I think if that happens, we would have unlocked a massive, massive potential of not just consumer demand in this country, but also just general building of credit files in this country, which is very, very thin today. Very few people have credit files, and most of, other than people in this call, most of us who do have thin files. So I think that can really change the game in a lot of ways, and the ecosystem is getting ready for it. So this is the time to probably look at building something in this space for any startup that's looking to leverage UPI to build something. And just the last thing on the reading recommendation,
Yes.
if I could recommend one book in the context of what we're talking about, I would say please go read Peter Thiel's 0 to 1. It's probably one of the best books I've read, and how it's changed my thinking to look at so many things. And the power law I spoke about, most people should know that you cannot diversify your life. So if you find that one job, one startup, one relationship, please focus all your eggs in that basket. And that's how you get outsized returns over a long period of time. Maybe the money you make out of those things, maybe not relationships, but maybe even the money you make out of your startups and your jobs is what you can diversify to diversify your risk. But where you spend your time is probably the biggest investment you're making, because we all have the same limited amount of time. So focus on what you do best, what you're getting rewarded for, and what's your best chance to succeed. If you're able to do that, I think sky is the limit, or maybe that also is not anymore.
Yeah. So, Vishesh, thank you so much for your time today, and your insights have been incredibly valuable. And thank you, everyone, our audience who joined us. Stay tuned for more sessions like this. Thank you so much, Vishesh.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. And thanks for all the questions. I'd love to connect with whoever wants to. I'm on LinkedIn, happy to connect with people there.
Great, Vishesh. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. You too. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.